Hey everyone, it's Jananie and welcome back to my channel, This Story Ain't Over. Today's video is going to be a fun one because we are going to be tier ranking all of my old favorite YA books. If you're new here to the book community, YA means young adult books. They are essentially teen books, and YA books obviously saw a really big boom in the years that I was a teen and the years that I was growing up, and even into the years when I was in university. And I read so much YA over the years, and it wasn't until about a couple years ago that I finally started to shift my reading mostly over to adult books. And now in the current day, I actually mainly only read adult books. I haven't picked up a YA in a really long time, and even when I do, it's like for a very specific reason or because it's by an author that I really like or something like that. Some of you have been here for a very long time and you've grown with me and my taste, and I appreciate you so much for just going along with the ride. And of course, there's a lot of you who are new here who have come to my channel after my taste has changed and you're more into that taste. But today I thought it might be fun to take a walk down memory lane and reminisce all of the YA books that I used to love, all of the big series that I used to love, and tier rank them based off of how I feel about them now. I feel like this is going to be a little bit shocking for some of you who have watched my old videos and saw me like gush over these books endlessly, and now I'm kind of like indifferent about some of them. I think it's just interesting to see how time can always change your perspective on things, and it also just shows how subjective reading can be, even to the same person who is revisiting a book many years later. With that said, before we get into the tier ranking, I did want to talk about the sponsor of today's video, which is Dreamscape. Dreamscape is the publisher of the new title, Falling for Gage by Mia Sheridan. You may recognize this author as the author of the beloved book Archer's Voice. The audiobook for Falling for Gage is out now, and it's narrated by Maeve York and Benjamin Sands. As you guys know, I love audiobooks. I listen to them all the time. With my ADHD brain, it's one of the only ways I get any of my reading done, and I'm always excited when there's a new audiobook out for a book. And for those of you who have read the viral Archer's Voice and loved it, you'll probably love Falling for Gage. I've been in such a romance mood recently, and my next vlog is actually going to be a romance reading vlog, and this book is perfect for that kind of vibe. It's a small town romance that is a friends to lovers situation, and it's full of charm and a little bit of spice. There's an element of hidden identity and finding your true self, and although it's a standalone, you can also see it as part of an interconnected series and as part of the same universe as Archer's Voice and the author's other book, Travis. Essentially, the book follows our main characters, Gage and Rory, or Aurora, and Gage has always been focused on work and hasn't really been into relationships, mostly just one-night stands. But when Rory walks into town as a art appraiser, he is completely blindsided and completely interested in her. And the story behind Rory is that she wants to find her father, and her late mother revealed that her father lived in Calliope, this small town that Gage is from. And so when one of her gallery-owning friends offers to, give her some cover and allow her to sleuth around town and find more about her father, she jumps at the chance, and that's where she runs into Gage. If you're really into contemporary fiction and looking for a new romance to read, then this is definitely one to be picking up. And the audiobook is so wonderfully narrated by Maeve York and Benjamin Sands, so it's definitely one to pick up. Thank you so much to Dreamscape for sponsoring today's video, and now let's get into all of the tiers that I have for these books. Alrighty, these tiers are fairly straightforward, but I'm going to go through each. So we have Forever Favorite at the top. These are ones that I still love. I have Actually Good, which are just the ones that I objectively think are good, but they're not necessarily like a super favorite. And then I've got Felt So Much at the time, but now I just feel... These are the books that I kind of feel indifferent about now, even though I really, really loved them back in the day, or I was so obsessed with them back in the day, and it just gives you a perspective of like how your opinion can change on things. And then I've got a tier for the books that I think the movie was better, because I feel like that's a specific feeling I have about a couple of these books. And then we've got Only the First One Was Good, which I think is a common theme for many of these series. And then in the orange, I've got Honestly Don't Remember Much of This, pretty straightforward. Never Understood the Hype, which I feel like is going to be a spicy one because I have a few that were very popular ones that I never understood the hype. And then I've got all the red tiers, which are the ones that are like bottom of the barrel, and this color coding is kind of intentional. The ones that are the same color are kind of on the same level, but I don't want you to feel like the ones that are like slightly above are any better than the ones that are slightly below in the same color. But I've got I Didn't Know Better at the time. This is a problematic author or a problematic story, or I didn't have taste back then, and objectively when I think about these books now, I think they're bad. And then I've got Unhinged / How Is This YA, because there's a couple books that were like this. Finally, I've got Paranormal Crack with hunky guys who don't talk much and just watch you sleep. This is a very specific subset of books, and it is a subset of books that I read a lot of in high school, and I felt like they just needed their own tier. Anyways, I have 71 books to go through, so let's get cracking. I don't know where to start. Should we just go in order? Should I go at random? Okay, we're gonna go with The Afterlife of Holly Chase by Cynthia Hand. This is actually a really cute one, and I think it's objectively really good. This is essentially a Christmas Carol retelling that just features this like bratty girl who learns the meaning of Christmas and learns the meaning of being a better person, and, you know, falls in love and learns a whole lesson by the end. And it was honestly just really cute. Okay, next we're gonna go with The Goddess Test. I don't remember who this was by. Amy Carter. This, I think, goes with Paranormal Crack with hunky guys, because this is like a Greek mythology retelling, and it features this pretty girl who goes through this like goddess test against all of these gods to become a goddess. And I think it's because she's fallen in love. I think it might be a Hades and Persephone retelling. Like, I don't even remember half of this, but all I remember was that it was just like hot hunky guy, not much substance to a main character, very self-insert, and overall not worth it. Ooh, okay, Delirium. This is a hard one. This, I can't remember. I feel like I read 1 or 2 of the books, and I don't know where to put it. I honestly don't remember this. It is escaping me. I think it was one of those like dystopian books. I remember there being something about a curfew in the book. That's about all I remember. If you remember this book or series, let me know. Ooh, Girls of Paper and Fire. This book I actually genuinely think is a good book, so it's going up in actually good. It's basically this like Chinese inspired fantasy, and it involves like these different races of people, and some of them have sort of like demon animalistic qualities, and our main character is chosen as one of the like concubine brides of this like awful king, and there's like 9 of them or something each year, and she ends up falling in love with one of the other concubine brides. And so we get this like sapphic romance while they're like trapped in this situation and they're trying to figure out what to do. This was part of a series, and I remember I don't think I ended up reading the sequel, but regardless of that, I feel like I still really loved the first book, and it still sticks in my mind as like a good book, so that's why it's going here. Alrighty, next up, I feel like I need a mouse. I'm like dragging these and it's not doing very well. Yes, this is better. Okay. Oh, this is hard. I feel like this one, okay, I'm gonna put this in I never understood the hype, but really, like, it would be part of the red category. Actually, maybe I'm gonna just change this to red, because Carry On by Rainbow Rowell was like the dumbest thing ever to me, personally. It's essentially glorified Harry Potter fanfiction put into a traditionally published book with like changed names and a semi-different storyline, and it's like a romance between Harry and Draco, in a sense. And the weird thing about this is that these characters were actually like the fan fiction characters from this other book that Rainbow Rowell had written, Fangirl. And that book I actually kind of liked because I related to several aspects of it, but the whole fanfiction bits were like my least favorite part, like reading about these random characters. I don't care for like Harry Potter fanfiction all that much either. So the fact that this book came out and then it had like multiple sequels and everyone was so obsessed with it blew my mind, because I found it so boring. I found all of the side characters really annoying, and I just didn't understand the hype. So sorry for those of you who are major Carry On fans. Okay, next up we're gonna go with Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. This one, I think I'm gonna put this under, I honestly don't remember much of this, but it was good. I remember it being good, but like I don't really remember much of it, and it's not that significant in my brain, and I don't think of it often either. It's essentially like these two characters who meet one night and then they spend like 24 hours together, and there's like an element of music that they bond over, and they're both like these random teens in New York, and they don't really know each other that well, and they fall in love sort of over this single day. And I always enjoy those storylines, like falling in love over a single day in like this very compact situation, unlikely situation. But aside from that, it was a bit of a forgettable book. Same with Dash and Lily's Book of Dares, though I'm gonna say that the movie or the adaptation of it was better. I really liked the adaptation of it. It's like a whole series that was on Netflix and it came out like several Christmases ago. It's such a fun Christmas show to watch. It's adorable, it's fun, it's cute. They did change several things from the book, but they also like added a lot more to the book because the book was very short. So I feel like the show just did it better. Love from A to Z by S.K. Ali. This is actually good. It is a romance between these two Muslim kids who attend this like international school, I think. It talks about like Islamophobia and it talks about grief, and it was just a really beautifully told story. It was a really cute romance as well. Highly recommend. Okay, The Winner's Curse by Mary Rakowski. This is so hard because I think I'm gonna put this in felt so much of the time, but now I just feel, you know? This book is a fantasy and it involves this weird and interesting story that actually, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe this should go under I didn't know better, because I remember there being a slavery plot. Essentially, our main character is like the daughter of this like commander, and she's white, obviously. And she essentially like buys this slave at the beginning of the book, and then he ends up like coming to work at their home. But then the joke's kind of on her because he is actually part of this resistance trying to get freedom from her race of people. I think they're like the Valerians, and then he's like from this other race of people or country of people. And so the story kind of gets flipped, like the power balance gets flipped. And I remember being impressed by that like power imbalance shift and like the war aspects of the book. And so I think at the time I didn't find it all that problematic, but maybe now if I read it, it might be. I can't really remember. With that said, I think I'm gonna put Never Understood the Hype a little bit lower so that I Didn't Know Better is a little bit higher. We're editing this as we go. The Wrath and the Dawn. Okay, this one is a weird one, and I'm putting it under Unhinged Houses YA. This is essentially a retelling of 1001 Nights, the story where this king takes a new bride every night and kills her in the morning, and then one day he gets this new bride and she basically saves her life by telling him stories at night and always leaving the stories semi-unfinished so that he has to keep her alive till the next night to hear the rest of the story. And this goes on for 1001 Nights. I think the source narrative is very interesting, and like it has some really interesting like anecdotes and like other stories to it. But this concept put into a YA book, now that I think about it, feels so strange to me. And it just felt very like Stockholm Syndrome, falling for your captor type vibe. I think it would have made a little bit more sense as an adult book and could have had more depth to it as well. Next I've got Monday Is Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson. This definitely goes under actually good. This is an incredible thriller by Tiffany D. Jackson. She's probably one of my favorite YA authors. Every single one of her books were bangers, and she still writes a lot of great books to this day. And she's also written a lot of horror as well, which are also amazing. But this one I remember being really popular, and for good reason. It was such a well-done thriller. Okay, I'm gonna say the same about The Poet X. Also really good. It's a novel in verse, follows a mixed-raced teen in high school. It's like not very plot oriented, but it's just such a beautiful book. It had some stunning poetry and was just like a examination of this character, and I really loved it. The Love and Lies of Roxana Ali by Sabina Khan. This one is definitely going in forever favorite, the first one in this tier. This book is by a South Asian author. Essentially, she has like these strict brown parents, and she is queer. She's a lesbian. And when her parents or her mom like catches her with her girlfriend and realizes the whole queer thing, she sort of loses her shit. And under the pretense of the main character's grandma being ill, her parents sort of take her off to Bangladesh to sort of pray the gay away and set her up with these men. And it was such a well done book that explored the experience of queer POC kids who come from strict backgrounds or who come from backgrounds where queerness is still not accepted. And I loved it because I felt so seen. I felt like it was such a great representation of some of the family that I have and know. And it was just overall a really incredible book. Like, it was so well written. Themes were really amazing. I think it's one of those books that like should be in required reading for kids to see and learn and understand. All right, next up we have Anna and the French Kiss by Stephanie Perkins. Oh my god. Yeah, this one, I honestly don't remember much of it, but I remember it being fun. It was like this romance series, and each one was like a different character and set in a different place, I think, or something like that. Okay, we have 13 Reasons Why by Jay Asher. This one I'm gonna put under unhinged. How is this YA? This book I think is definitely unhinged because, as we know, if you've watched the TV show series that was wildly popular, it's about this girl who commits suicide and then leaves these 13 tapes behind for each of the people she names as a reason for her killing herself. And it's such an unhinged concept to put in a teen book. I know suicide and like suicidal ideation and like all of these topics are like very topical for teens. However, it's such an unhinged concept, and like there's so much talk of how it romanticized suicide, which I think in this case it did a bit. And when the show came out as well, it also exacerbated some of those issues. And while the show did like go through other issues as well that I think were really well explored, this overall aspect was just so unhinged, and it was really more of like a thriller show, but it was oriented towards teens. And so it just couldn't decide what it wanted to do. Like, is it a thriller for adults? Because the second season got really graphic. Or is it for teens and like something to be on their level? But yeah, overall, just the concept of like assigning blame to other people for someone's own very ill state of mind is a little sketchy to me. Anyways, on that happy note, the next book that I have here is Perks of Being a Wallflower, which actually happens to be a really excellent representation of depression, anxiety, mental illness in a high school kid. Our main character, Charlie, I believe, is in grade 9, and he's starting at a new school, and he is very obviously struggling, doesn't really have friends, and he's sort of starting to connect with these different people at school and starting to fall in love for the first time, and he's getting mentored by this teacher. It's just overall this really heartwarming but also heartbreaking book of this kid's journey through this year of his life and this journey of his mental health and sort of mental illness, because he's dealing with some really heavy things that you don't know about until you get further into the book. And I would say the book has a lot of triggers, so search up content warnings before you go into it, but it remains to this day one of my favorite books ever because I felt so seen by this book. As someone who was a depressed kid back in high school, back when I was much younger, like, this is the book that I felt so seen in. Strange Dreamer by Laini Taylor. This one also goes up to forever favorite. This is one of my favorite fantasy books ever, favorite fantasy series. It's a duology. The second book is called Muse of Nightmares. The way Laini Taylor writes in this series is just so freaking beautiful. I love the main characters. I loved the like sort of fairy tale-esque nature of the story, while also having some really deep and dark themes to the story as you get further in. This remains one of my favorite series, and I still recommend it like all the time. Ooh, okay, we have Warcross by Marie Lu, which I must say is a forever favorite. This is one of my favorite books ever. I loved Marie Lu as a writer. I don't really read many of her books now, but this series and one more that will come up later are some of my favorite YA books ever. This is like such a fun book. It's like kind of a near future sci-fi, and it involves the world having gotten this technology called the Neuralink. There are like these virtual reality games or like competitions, and this main character is like a hacker or something, or bounty hunter, and finds herself glitching into one of these games. And then the creator of the game sort of flies her to Japan and wants her to track down someone who is sabotaging the games from within. And so she's sort of like acting as a double agent in this game, but then also falling for this very sexy and young creator of these games. And it's very, very good. And the romance was top tier. Ooh, okay, Study in Charlotte. This is, again, another one that was like actually really, really good. I stand by it now. It's such a fun retelling of Sherlock Holmes, and it's got multiple books in the series, and it's essentially like a self-contained mystery in each of the books. And then we've also got an overarching narrative of like the romantic relationship between the two main characters and other stuff going on. And I forgot to mention, it's also a gender-bent version of Sherlock Holmes. So we have Charlotte Holmes, who happens to be a descendant of Sherlock Holmes, and then we've got Jamie, or James Watson, who is a descendant of Watson from Sherlock Holmes. And so they sort of work together on these mysteries, and Charlotte is this very interesting and eccentric character, and just seeing the dynamic between the characters was just so fun, and I overall just love the series as a whole. Okay, next up I have Challenger Deep by Neal Shusterman. I love Neal Shusterman as an author, and this book again is also like an incredible one. I think I'm gonna put it under forever favorite because I really love this book. It is essentially a contemporary fiction where the main character is this teen who has some sort of mental disorder. We assume it's something to the effect of like schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder. He has like these intense illusions. And so the book has two storylines or timelines. One is where the main character is in this psychiatric hospital where he's interacting with other patients and making friends and whatever. And then the other storyline is him on this ship of his illusions, and you start to see like characters that sort of cross between both versions of the story. Like he's sort of envisioning some of these people in his delusions. And it's just a heartbreaking but beautiful book that represents mental illness. Neal Shusterman has a son who also has the same disorder that the main character does in the book, and he also helped Neal Shusterman write the book and also contributed these like drawings that he has made during some of his episodes, and so those are in the book as well. And it's such a stunning portrayal of mental illness, and yeah, I loved it so much. Alrighty, ooh, okay, one of my favorites. We have Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. This definitely goes in forever favorite. This series, oh, I love it so much. Sabaa Tahir is one of my favorite authors, and this series is just so fantastic. It's a 4-book series. I've never shed more tears over a series than I have over this one, because I love these characters so much. There's so many twists and turns in this series. There's so many shocking revelations. There's so many shocking character deaths. It's almost like a YA Game of Thrones in some sense, without like a super Western setting. It's got more of a diverse setting, and I just loved it so much. It's also got Middle Eastern mythology thrown in there, so there's like jinns and other beings in the books, and I just loved it so much. It is to this day one of my favorite series, and I cherish it so much deeply in my heart. Alright, next we have The Archived by V.E. Schwab. If you didn't know, V.E. Schwab started her career in YA, and this was one of her series. It's a duology. It was supposed to have a third book, but then the publisher decided not to go ahead with the third book, and this was the first one, and I honestly really enjoyed this at the time, but now that I think back on it, it was just good, but not amazing. Like, I think I'd put it under I don't remember much of this, because I honestly don't. It essentially followed a main character who could see ghosts and was like this librarian of ghosts, where like she was tasked with capturing these ghosts and leading them to this like soul library where they were like put on these shelves. But then there's something like sinister going on, and there's like a bit of a love story, and she lives in this like haunted hotel. That was essentially the premise, but I don't really remember much else. And then we have The Lightning Thief. I know this isn't really YA, it's more middle grade, but I just had to include it here because we love Percy Jackson in this house, and it's just always going to be God tier for me. The Iron Trial. This is part of the Magisterium series by Holly Black and Cassandra Clare. I don't know if anyone really talks about the series, but it was a series that I actually really enjoyed. It's a middle grade series, but like I was reading this I think in like university, and I still really enjoyed it. So I'm putting this under actually good, because it's like sort of a chosen one fantasy series, you know, set at this magical school and all of this, but it was like different. It had some really unique aspects to it, and I feel like the characters felt more believably as middle school kids as opposed to the Harry Potter series in some ways. Okay, this next one is Hush Hush by I don't even know who. This is definitely going under Paranormal Crack. This is definitely one of the books that I was thinking of when I made that title for the tier, because I swear this book is like semi-new adult, YA, sexy guy, I think a fallen angel or something, doesn't talk much, watches her sleep. There is some seemingly spicy bits to this, I think, from what I remember, or maybe not. But it's very like Twilight, doesn't talk much, probably sparkles, something like that. Okay, next we have Aragon. This is an unpopular opinion, or maybe it's not, but I love this series so much. This was one of my favorite series ever when I was a kid. I'd read the first 2 books and was obsessed, and then I like subsequently was ready each time a new book was out. So I think there's like 4 books in the series. I was like so obsessed when Brislinger and Inheritance, the last book, came out, and I was like bawling tears at the end of the series because I was so upset that it was over. It's essentially like an old school fantasy series, very Lord of the Rings-esque, but I feel like the way that the author wrote the characters was so interesting, and the different races, like there's elves, dwarves, humans, whatever. I just found that to be really interesting. There's obviously dragons in this as well, and dragon riders, and I just loved everything about it. Like, I thought it was just so artfully done, and I just really fell for the characters and was so invested in their stories. And this series has actually recently gotten a companion novel from the perspective of one of the side characters. It's called Murtaugh. That's the name of the character, and I have it somewhere here, and it's on my list to read because like just the thought of diving back into this world excites me so much. I used to like write fan fiction for this series. Like, that's how deep I was into this. So yeah, I need to know what else is happening with these characters. Because another aspect of the series is that a lot of things are left open-ended at the end of the series and sort of vague. And so your mind could just go in 100 different directions and imagine 100 different scenarios. And so yeah, I just was so obsessed. And I'm still obsessed. Alrighty, next we have The Selection. This I'm gonna put under I never understood the hype, because I think I did read the first one and I didn't really enjoy it and I thought it was kind of dumb. But this was such a popular series back in the day and so many people were obsessed, and it had so many like additional books in the series, but I never really got it. Okay, next we have Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. This is probably my favorite of John Green's books, and this is going under, this is going under Actually Good. Although it was more of like a forever favorite back when I first read it, because the anxiety OCD rep is like incredible. I do think the overall narrative could have used a little more oomph when I think about it now. Throne of Glass, woohoo, Sarah J Maas. I'm gonna put this under Never Understood the Hype, I guess. For the first book at least, I really didn't understand the hype. Like, I read it, didn't think it was that great, but I did continue on with the series. Now, when we got to the second and third book, I actually really enjoyed those books. But when we got to the 4th, 5th, and 6th, that's when I started hating the Sarah J Maas books and started giving up on her overall. She's also a Zionist, so we don't support that in this house. So yeah, this is definitely going in a red tier. All right, next we have a book that I feel like no one ever talks about. It's like a very unknown book, but that is This Dark Endeavor by Kenneth Opel. This is essentially a Frankenstein retelling, but like with teen Frankenstein, and like he has a twin brother and he lives in like this manor house, and this is like such a great duology. It's got a second book as well, Such Wicked Intent, and yeah, it's just so creepy. It's like on the horror side. It's got all this like dark obsession to it. It's so interesting to imagine like this version of Frankenstein as a teen and the type of person he may have been, but also like this extra horror and like fantasy elements that are thrown into the book. All right, next we have Looking for Alaska by John Green. This one I'm definitely putting under, I honestly don't remember much of this. I thought it was fairly mediocre. I do remember it being like a coming of age story, but I didn't think it was that great. Okay, To All the Boys We Loved Before. This one, I read the entire series, and to be honest, I think the movies were better. I think the movies just add a level of charm to the overall series. that was just not really there in the books. I feel like the movie fleshed things out a little bit more. It felt more cute and fun and adorable and less catty and sort of immature. I know it's a YA series, but like, you know, some of the stuff that happens in the books just felt so cliche versus the movies, they felt really cute. Next we have Paper Towns. This is another one that I don't really remember much of. Another John Green book. Not really that good, to be honest. Okay, next we have Cinder. This one, oh my god, this was like actually one of my favorite books ever. I'm gonna put this under felt so much at the time, but now I just feel this was a 4-book series, I want to say. Cinder, Scarlet, Cress, Winter. I was so obsessed with this series when I was in high school. Each book follows a different princess, but it's like this futuristic retelling of these fairy tales, and each book is sort of set in a different place, and they're based off of where the original fairy tale came from. So Cinderella, if you don't know, the actual original story, or a lot of the origins of the story, actually come from China because of the whole like feet binding thing. So the author sort of chose like a futuristic China as a setting, and the main character Cinder is Chinese, and a lot of the characters are Chinese in this like initial book. But then when you get into later books, like they're set in different places, and we've got different main characters and like different love stories as well, and I loved that aspect. But everything like interconnects as you go along, and Cinder remains like a main character throughout all the books, but we get these other characters joining along. And I think what I loved about the series was that the author made a concerted effort towards creating diversity in this series at a time when most people weren't even bothering to do even that. And I know a lot of people look back on the series now, especially with the first one, and think, oh, you know, it's a Chinese main character, but it's written by a white woman, and that feels like not great. And, you know, obviously I would rather we have more books written by the people that they're trying to represent. And, you know, if we had a Chinese author at that time writing this book or series, like that would have been amazing. But I do appreciate what Marissa Meyer was doing at that time, consciously trying to include diversity and consciously trying to portray this whole cast of characters that come from different walks of life and working together. So I really love this series, but sometimes when I think back on it, I'm like, okay, it wasn't that amazing, but it was still really fun and entertaining, and I really loved the characters, and they have like a soft spot in my heart. Next we have The Maze Runner. This one, honestly, I never understood the hype, so that's where it's going. I read the first book, didn't really like it, thought it was kind of dumb. Okay, next we have Legend by Marie Lu, which is the first of one of my favorite series ever. And this goes under forever favorite. This is a like dystopian series by Marie Lu. The second book is Prodigy. The third book is Champion. Champion has one of the most heartbreaking endings you will ever read in the history of YA books. I remember reading it and sobbing for like hours afterwards and being so heartbroken by that book. But I also just remember being so sucked in by the first couple books and just being so obsessed with them and the characters. This series just did a really great job of portraying this like fairly realistic future version of our world. Climate change has ravaged the world. As usual, the wealth divide has gotten even worse, and it portrays a sort of militarized version of the United States. And it involves a hero who is our main character, Day, and there's a bit of like a enemies to lovers situation, which was done really, really well. And overall, it's just like one of my favorite series. I think back on it all the time, and I think of it so fondly, so highly recommend if you've never read it. Okay, next I have Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. I'm gonna put this under, actually good, because this series of Cassandra Clare's is probably my favorite, The Infernal Devices. I loved the characters, I loved the way the series ends, and I liked it more than the City of Bones series or the Mortal Instruments series. I think it had just a little bit more maturity to it and was a little bit more sophisticated, and I just liked the characters better as well. And it was equally funny, hilarious, heartbreaking, and cute. But I don't think it's like all the way up there anymore for me. I think if you asked me like a couple years ago, I'd be like, yes, this is still one of my favorite series ever. But now when I think about it, although I really love them, they're not like up there anymore for me, I guess. Partly because I feel like I've read more impactful books now that this sort of pales in comparison now for me. So with that said, I'm actually going to move City of Bones into I Felt So Much at the Time, but now I just feel it's still up there. I did really love that series, but I don't think it's as impressive as I used to think it was. Similarly, Frankly in Love by David Yoon. When I read this book, I loved it so much. I was so obsessed with it. Now I feel kind of meh about it. It's not that memorable in my mind, but I do remember it having the storyline of like the main character Frank, who's like Korean American, dealing with like the dual identity and struggling with that, and also struggling with the concept that his parents wanted him to date someone who was also Korean, but he, you know, had like this white girlfriend, but then he ends up fake dating this like family friend who's also Korean, and then they fall in love. And I thought that that was really cute. And it also was just like more relatable to me as like also a child of immigrants and with similar mentalities. All right, Miss Peregrine's School for Peculiar Children. Honestly, this one I never really understood the hype. I enjoyed it, but not that much. I also think the first one was the only good one. I'm gonna put it under this tier. Only the first one was good. The rest kind of didn't do it for me. And when I think about the series, it's fairly forgettable. Okay, next we have The Hunger Games, which immediately goes up to forever favorite for me because I still, to this day, think it's such an incredible series, such a well-written series. Suzanne Collins is an amazing writer, and everything that she did with this series was just so unprecedented, but also just so spot on. The social commentary was just so incredible, and I still think it's incredible. And I have reread the series multiple times, and I think even if I picked it up right now, I'd still be blown away by it. All right, next we have The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. This one honestly is going under I Felt So Much at the Time, but now I just feel eh. It involves a like single day romance, like these two characters end up in this unlikely circumstance, spend one day together, sort of fall in love, and it's a romance between this Korean American boy who's like chafing under his parents' expectations, and then this African American girl who I think her family was like about to be deported or something like that, and so she's trying to find a way to like keep her and her family in the country, but you know, it doesn't seem like it's gonna work out, but she ends up spending this day with this boy. The interesting thing about this book is that it had other chapters that were like from the perspective of other people who encountered these two throughout that day, and you're hearing their perspective and how their story intersects with the two main characters, and that was really interesting. Next I have The Illuminae Files by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. I honestly loved this series. Loved it so much at the time. Now I kind of feel meh about it, but I do think it was really cool the way it was set up. It's like this sort of dossier format with like images, and if you listen to the audiobook, like different sound effects and all of this stuff, and so many different characters, and there's like chat logs and security footage and whatever, and so you're like seeing the story unfold with all of these different elements, and it's like a sci-fi set in space. Really interesting situation and like AI characters, and there's 3 books I think, and they all sort of are interconnected, but they follow different main characters, and it all gets resolved by the end. But it's, yeah, it was such an interesting series, and I really enjoyed it at the time. Okay, next we have Fire, which is actually the second book in the Graceling series, so I'm gonna rank both of these. I really love this series. I'm not gonna put it up in forever favorite because they do have an element of being these YA books that could have had a little bit more to them, but I really enjoyed them at the time. I think they were actually objectively great books. They involve this like fantasy world where people have these things called graces, which are like these unique magical powers, and our main character in Graceling has the grace to kill, but like there's a mystery around that too. There's a romance, and then the second book, Fire, is actually a companion that is set like many years before, like decades before, and follows a different character, and she is sort of like this demoness, you could say. She also is like falling in love and like fighting in this war type of thing, and it's just really interesting. I just found it to be a really like romantic fantasy series, and I was obsessed. Okay, next I have A Very Large Expanse of Sea by Tara Mafi. This one, I'm gonna put under I Felt So Much at the Time, but now I just feel, because this one, honestly, I was so obsessed when it came out. I did a whole like 45-minute book review of it on my channel. I loved it so much, and to this day, like I do feel very fondly towards it. However, now that I think about it, I do think that the story was fairly simplistic, and I think it could have been afforded more nuance if it was like an adult book or something. So I feel like there was just some limitations to the fact that it was a YA, that you couldn't explore some of the like deeper political aspects to the story. So yeah, although it was like really sweet and cute and heartbreaking, I think I wanted a little bit more. But it's essentially following this main character who is Muslim American. She wears a hijab and she falls for like this white boy at her school, and there is all of this like pressure from everyone else around them. This is like post 9/11, rampant Islamophobia, and they're trying to sort of survive in the face of that. Next I have Little Brother by Cory Doctorow. This is a fantastic book. I'm gonna put under actually good. It's like a dystopian, not really, set in our near future with like this big brother aspect to it, and like lots of surveillance and hacking and really smart teens, and I honestly really loved it. This is like a really old book, but it's incredibly done. We're getting into some spicy territory. Okay, I'm gonna go rapid fire with a few of these. Uglies, I honestly don't remember much of, and I never really understood the hype. Hello Girls, this is by two authors, Brittany Cavallaro and Emily Henry. If you didn't know, Emily Henry did write YA books back in the day. This one I honestly don't remember much of, so it's going in there, but it's like a road trip book. Divergent, this one is definitely going under only the first one was good, because if you've read Insurgent or Allegiant, you know the series just tanks after the first one. Beautiful Creatures is definitely going under Paranormal Crack. This one is a weird series, and I remember it being so ridiculous, especially later on in the series. There's like vampires and werewolves, I think, and just lots of weirdness, and a very like pick-me girl type of main character. Alright, this next one's gonna be my most controversial ranking, but the Raven Boys series is definitely going under never understood the hype. I read all 4 of these books, and guys, for not 1 minute did I understand the hype for this series. I thought it was just like mediocre at best, and I honestly just didn't find it that interesting or unique. The Raven Boys weren't that interesting to me, to be honest, and I felt like the magic system was just like a little under fleshed out, like underdeveloped, and I just wanted more out of it, to be honest. This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab, this one's actually a really good one. Oopsie. And I think I'm gonna put it under Felt So Much at the time, but now I just feel, because I really, really loved this one when it came out. I was so obsessed with it. But objectively now, I think it's one of her less sophisticated novels, but it does have an overall really good message. It involves this idea that whenever humans create or commit acts of violence, a monster is created out of that energy. And so we have like these monsters and humans facing off, and these two characters who are sort of pitted against each other. One's a monster, one is a human, and it's just a really interesting concept. Like, it's very unique, and I really like that. Cruel Prince is gonna go under Felt So Much at the time. Again, really enjoyed it, but now I'm like, eh. Howl's Moving Castle by Dinah Wayne Jones is a forever favorite. This is like sort of YA, sort of middle grade, but it's a fantastic book. Even better in some ways than the movie, but some ways not better, but it's just fantastic. Truly Devious, this I am gonna put under actually good. This is a really incredible mystery book and mystery series. It's set at this like private elite school that's shrouded in a lot of mystery, and the main character is like a true crime obsessed girl, and she's bent on like uncovering the mystery of this school and what happened to the founder and his wife and daughter who went like missing. Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. Although I really love Strange the Dreamer, I honestly don't remember anything about Daughter of Smoke and Bone, and I know it has like more books in the series, but I never really got into them. So in some ways I didn't really understand the hype, but also I don't really remember much, and I think I just didn't try hard enough to get into the other books. Six of Crows obviously goes under forever favorite for me because it's Six of Crows. It's Leigh Bardugo. I love. Oh shit, I didn't put Shadow and Bone in here, but Shadow and Bone would also go under forever favorite for me. Alright, Lady Midnight by Cassandra Clare. This is the first in the Dark Artifices series by Cassandra Clare, and honestly, I'm putting this under controversial. I didn't understand the hype? No, maybe only the first one was good? Though did I like the second one? I can't remember. I'm gonna put it under only the first one was good, because I remember not really enjoying the series as much. I think actually I'm gonna put it under I don't remember much. But that still feels kind of blasphemous because I don't think it's worse than Divergent. So it's gonna go here. Out of the Cassandra Clare series, this was probably my least favorite of them. I just didn't really like the characters as much, and I found them a little annoying as well. And I never actually finished the series. I never finished the third book. All My Rage by Sabatahir is definitely going up in forever favorite. An incredible, incredible intergenerational trauma, star-crossed lovers, contemporary story that will break your freaking heart. Fault in Our Stars is definitely going under the movie was better because, yeah, I think there's like parts of the book that like the dialogue is just not that great, but then you watch the movie and it's like way better. When Dimple Met Rishi. Oh my god, this one I feel like I'm gonna put it here. I really liked it at the time, but now I think back and I'm like, it wasn't that amazing. It's just like a contemporary fiction with South Asian main leads, and that was part of the reason why I loved it so much. Objectively, it's also just a really fun contemporary romance, but I think now looking back on it, it's not that unique in my memory. Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds is an incredible novel in verse. Absolutely stunning, gripping, incredible. If you haven't read it, go read it. I can't even explain what it's about. You just have to read it. Serpent and Dove. This one, I'm like tempted to put under paranormal crack, but also under, I'm gonna put it under I Didn't Know Better. I initially really liked the first book, but I also didn't understand some of the hype because I thought it was good, but I didn't think it was amazing. And it was one of those YA books that like people said was YA, but it really felt like more like new adult and had like more steamy scenes in it, which I think, yeah, it was more of a new adult book overall. It's like a fantasy series and it follows like a witch and a witch hunter and sort of like a hate to love romance and a marriage of convenience as well. Star Touch Queen by Rajni Chokshi. This one definitely goes under I felt so much at the time, but now I just like this one I really liked at the time. It's got like South Asian mythology woven in, but also like a Hades and Persephone retelling. It's like all the things that I would love. But I do think execution wise, it could have been better. I think the second half of the book is definitely better than the first half. But overall, Rajni Chokshi's writing, because this was her debut book, this was just a little bit too flowery at the time. And when I think back on it, like I don't really remember much specifics and it doesn't stick out that much in my memory now. Twilight is obviously going under paranormal crack. I have only read the first book, but even back then I knew that everyone was hyping so hard about this book, but like this man was just sparkling. Like who cares? Gilded Wolves is definitely going under actually good for me. It's an incredible series. I do really love it. It has a very soft spot in my heart, but objectively I don't think it's like a forever favorite. It's not quite as good as some other books that I have read. However, I think it's a really incredible book and it talks a lot about the effects of colonialism, and I think that was what was so stunning about the series overall, and I feel like that aspect and message was just lost on so many people when it came out because it had such a diverse cast of characters and it was really delving into this topic of theft and of colonialism and the stealing of art and artifacts and history from other cultures and civilizations, and it was just really well done. Then I have Mirage. I don't know if anyone remembers this book, but I honestly really enjoyed this book, but I never ended up picking up the next one. It's like this fantasy sci-fi situation, involves this like awful princess and like her body double who takes her place to like protect this awful princess, and then the body double ends up falling for like a prince or something. And it was like interesting in a way, and it had like this political element to it too. Allegedly is also going under forever favorite. As I said, Tiffany D. Jackson, incredible writer, incredible thriller author. This is like one of her best ones and it's just so chilling. If you read to the end, you're like, damn. All right, last two books. Red Queen, I'm gonna put under Never Understood the Hype. I did read the first one. I thought it was okay. I didn't love it. I found some of the characters kind of annoying, but I know it was such a popular series and so many people loved the series, and it had like so many other sequels. Like I don't even remember how many books were in the final series, but I never read past the first one because I just didn't really understand the hype at the time. I feel like everything that was in Red Queen I had seen in other books, and it had been done better in other books. All right, and we're on to our last book, and this is Scythe by Neil Shusterman, and this definitely goes under forever favorite. This is an incredible and probably like one of the best, can I say the best, YA series I've ever read. This series is a sci-fi series that is just so incredibly thought out and imagined, and has so much like great commentary on our world and the future of our world. Essentially, it's like this far future version of our world where humanity has conquered death, disease, destruction, basically everything, and people live these indefinitely long lives, and they can reverse their aging and can be revived after dying and all this other stuff. And so because of that, and in order to curb population growth, the world came up with these people called Scythes, who are these masked and robed people who are given the power to kill a quota of people each year to maintain the population so that we don't use out the Earth's resources. And so our main characters in the book are these two kids who are competing to become the next Scythe. And it's such an interesting concept, and it expands further in the later books, but it was just so incredibly done. Like, the second book in the series was probably my favorite, but the overall series was just fantastic. If you've never read it, I highly recommend. With that said, this is my entire ranking of all of my old favorite YA books. I feel like this is a pretty good representation of how my reading taste has changed as well, and also just like the books that I genuinely still really love from back in those days, and the ones that have stuck dramatically in my memory and that I think are amazing and that you should definitely go check out. Let me know what you guys thought of this tier ranking, and if you agreed or disagreed with any of my rankings. I had so much fun sort of walking down memory lane with these books, and I hope you guys did too. Let me know if there were any books that you think I should have included on here or that you think I may have forgotten. I'd love to hear about that. As always, if you haven't already, go check out my Instagram, Goodreads, TikTok, and Bindery community down below. Thank you so much to my Bindery members for supporting me and my channel and making all of this possible. If you haven't signed up yet to my Bindery, you can get exclusive content from me, get a peek into the publishing process with my imprint Boundless Press, and you can also be thanked in the credits of my videos like these ones here. As always, thank you guys so much for watching and for being here, and I'll see you in my next video. So please remember that this story ain't over. Bye!